Yeah, we do. This is really exciting. So the free service Eric was talking about earlier is a fare alert program we have. It's completely free. You can sign up or actually learn more about it at abroaders.com/alerts. And what we're doing is we're allowing people in the community to select where they want to get alerts from. So based on where you're located or where you may be based and where you would want to travel, you can select really any region in the world. And what we're doing is we're sending out notifications anytime there is an extraordinary deal.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com. Happy Wednesday morning, fellow travelers, and welcome to another episode of the Abroaders Podcast. I'm Eric, checking in from Salvador, Brazil, with my co-host AJ, who is in Detroit, Michigan. Today we've got a really good show for you, some news and updates, an awesome free service that we've just launched for all the Abroaders community, as well as a change fee case study, a little update on some travel plans for a round the world trip, and a deep dive on planning award travel to Tokyo, Japan from North America. Show notes for today's episode are going to be at abroaders.com/Tokyo. How's it going, AJ?
It's going well, man. Actually have some warm weather here in Detroit. It's been nice. And I don't know if I told you this, but I had a nice weekend. Actually saw Vincent Coe, for anybody out there that has seen the Panda watches and Panda shades, the bamboo sunglasses. The founder, he was in town. He's actually a mutual contact of Eric and I. Went out with Vico on Saturday. It was his first full day in town, so it was pretty cool to catch up with him. Had some drinks, went to a Tigers game. They lost, but it was beautiful out, so it was a pretty good weekend.
Awesome, man. Vico is a very cool guy. I got to say, man, I was extremely impressed with the way that he launched the watch for Panda. I definitely encourage you guys to check out wearpanda.com. We're going to put a link in the show notes, but this is just like one of those examples of a product that totally blew me away. I mean, it's not necessarily that hard to come up with the idea once you see it, but the creativity and then just the execution. I have spent a lot of time talking with him about his business, and we're in a mastermind together as well. And just the logistics of what it takes to create sunglasses and watches out of natural bamboo. That kind of stuff breaks pretty easily if you don't do it properly. And I think he's figured out a way to build a really sturdy product and something that looks pretty awesome. And it seems like the fashion world is digging it as well. So I'm pretty happy to see that that's taken off for Vico.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. All right. So a couple of news and notes. One thing I wanted to mention to you, and I mean, possibly could be of use to any travelers. Frontier doesn't have much of a frequent flyer program, so there's not a lot of wins to be had with points, but they do offer great, really low cost airfare around the US, and that can be clutch if you're trying to position to an airport to do an international award trip. And they just announced that they're not going to be putting departure times on their tickets anymore. So if you get a ticket from Frontier, it's going to tell you the time that the gate is closing or the time that boarding closes instead of your departure, which I believe is still going to be 10 minutes later, so you can do the math, but they're stepping away from what all the other airlines are doing, and it'll be interesting to see if anybody follows them on this.
Here's a question, though. Don't the airlines have to be on some type of schedule? It's not like Frontier gets to leave when they want. That plane is scheduled for a certain time, you know?
Right, no, they don't trust you. Like the idea, I think, is they're like, all right, well, everybody's being a dick and they're showing up right when the departure is supposed to happen, and so we're just going to tell them, I guess the mentality is like, we'll put the time on the ticket 10 minutes earlier than departure time so that people see that. And I think it's interesting because until everybody else follows them, people, I think, are going to assume that the flight leaves at that written time on the ticket, and
or
maybe
at the
they will
very
show
least,
up earlier.
Yeah, at the very least, there will be some uncertainty, and people will probably err on the side of not missing their flight. So Yeah, that'd be good. I guess good for them for being unique, being
Yeah,
different.
yeah, it's nice to see a little leadership, and well, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed either if the rest of the airlines follow if it means that flights leave more on time, because nobody likes to sit on that plane and wait for the guy that decided to stay at the lounge for a couple extra cocktails and held up the whole plane getting out of the gate on time. So. Um, all right, so next thing I wanted to mention to you guys, this isn't exactly brand new, but I don't think we've brought this up on the show before. So we've got two new offers for the American Express issued Delta Sky Miles card. There's two personal cards. One of them is the Gold card, which has a $95 annual fee, and the other one is a Platinum card, which has a $195 fee. And right now they've bumped both of those bonuses up from 30,000. The Gold card has 50,000 points after 2,000 spend in 90 days. It also comes with a $50 Delta statement credit. So you have to buy something from Delta, so you got to have a flight or some sort of Delta expense coming up in the first 90 days. But if that does occur, you're going to get a $50 credit back. And this card does have foreign transaction fees, the Gold version, and the $95 fee is waived for the first year. The Platinum card, on the other hand, comes with 60,000 points after 2K in 90 days, and it has a $100 Delta statement credit. This one doesn't have the foreign transaction fees, but it does have the $195 fee, so it's not going to be waived for the first year. Essentially, you're going to pay an extra $200 in fees, or $195 for the extra 10,000 points, which isn't really a good deal. So I would probably go with the Gold card unless you've already got that one and still want to get those points. That would probably be the only reason to go for the Platinum. And maybe if you're going for status with Delta, the Platinum's a good choice because you get some extra elite
MQM,
qualifying
yeah.
miles. Yeah, you're. I don't even know what the hell those are. That
I think they're
stands
called
for.
like million something. Yeah, it's something that
Medallion. That's what it's.
medallion.
Medallion
Yes, it's
qualifying miles.
people that buy a lot of flights.
Yes, so
Not you and I.
you do get 10,000 towards your Delta status, but bottom line here is that the Gold card is a better deal all around. You're getting that $95 fee waived, but watch out for the foreign transaction fees. And if you've already had the Delta card, then take a look at the Platinum card because that could be a better option for you. All
Yeah,
right.
and there's plenty of cards that don't have foreign transaction fees, or the foreign transaction fees are waived. So that doesn't need to be your daily driver when you travel.
Yeah, exactly. Long term, it's not going to be a big deal. I think the only real consideration there is if you're going to be traveling in the first three
To
months
try to
when
hit the
you're
spend,
when you're
yeah.
working on that spend, just know that you got to write that cost off. That you're going to have $2,000. You're only going to be looking at maybe $60 or so in terms of fees, or $90, I guess, if for a 3% fee. I'm not totally sure what the fee rate is, but write that cost off. It's definitely worth it for the extra miles, but be aware of it and put that card in a drawer as soon as you can and move on to another one that has no foreign transaction fee if you're going to be out of the country for a sustained period of time.
And that is June 30th that they've advertised it as ending. So from the release of the show, less than 2 weeks. So if you do want to hop on that, go ahead and hop on that.
All right, cool. We got a great announcement for you guys.
Yeah, we do. This is really exciting. So the free service Eric was talking about earlier is a Fare Alert program we have. It's completely free. You can sign up or actually learn more about it at abroaders.com/alerts. And what we're doing is we're allowing people in the community to select where they want to get alerts from. So based on where you're located or where you may be based and where you would want to travel, you can select really any region in the world. And what we're doing is we're sending out notifications anytime there is an extraordinary deal. So something that is really better than you would normally find hopping on kayak. Maybe it's a mistake fare. Maybe it's just an unusually good promotion. But let us know where you want to go and where you will be leaving from, and we will alert you. There's been some big time deals, man. Like what? Like a couple $100 to Asia?
Yeah, I
Was
mean,
it?
right now we're still kind of toying around with what the limits are going to be for each region as far as how cheap it has to be for us to send out that email. But, we've had a lot of deals that come in under $300. We're talking like $250 for round trips to Asia, Europe, South America. A lot of them are from North America, but like AJ said, you can pick both your region that you're looking looking for departures from and the destinations you want to go to. So you could literally pick that you know, if you happen to be living in Spain right now, you can take departures from Europe to Asia and the US if those are the only two regions that you're interested in. And that was the big thing that I was most frustrated about. You know, we do a lot of research about pricing. Obviously, that's a big part of whether it makes sense to use miles or not. So we look at how much paid tickets cost all the time. And my biggest frustration was if you sign up for one of those alerts, you're going to get so many crappy deals. I mean, yes, there's good ones, but they just flood you with like, oh, it's $100 cheaper than it usually is, and that's still $800. So to me, that's not a good deal. So that's part number one that's frustrating. But part number two is sometimes you just don't care about certain regions. And if all they're sending you is cheap fares, you know, within the United States, and you just want to get the hell out of the United States, or if they're sending you fares to the Middle East and you don't have any interest in going there, it's just polluting your inbox. So we wanted to solve that problem by creating a way for you to tell us what you want, and we will send out only the fares that apply to the preferences that you've set. And every one of those fares is going to have a spot where you can adjust your preferences. There'll be a link at the bottom of the email where you can adjust your regions if you want to change what kind of information you get. And we're also working on getting it set up so that you can share those alerts with your friends really easily via social media. And obviously just forward that email along if you know somebody that wants to go to that destination, or you want to recruit a friend for your alert fare trip that you're booking thanks to the Abroaders Alerts program.
Yeah, so go to abroaders.com/alerts. Learn if you want to learn about it, and if you're ready to sign up, just click the button we'll have there, and then you will be getting those extremely relevant emails to your travel profile. Let's jump into Eric. You had a little bit of a Delta dilemma. Care to share?
Yeah, I think I made a little bit of a mistake with a ticket. So this is going to be probably the second to the last episode that I'm recording from Salvador. I'm headed back to the U.S., enjoy Detroit and the surrounding area for the rest of the summer. And way back in December, I booked a round trip on Delta before they started doing one-way awards. There was round trip only, and so I booked my December 28th departure and picked pretty much as far out as I could, and found a return September 8th. Knowing that I would not, be taking that ticket back on September 8th, and really hoping that Delta would screw something up and change the schedule or something, and I'd get out of the change fee. Well, Delta runs a really good operation. They're probably the best organized airline out of the big three in the US, and those flights haven't moved an inch, not a minute. They are right on schedule. I don't know if they've, one thing that interests me is I wonder if they hold off on announcing things when, something gets screwed up, but it's still far enough out that maybe they can fix it, and they don't have to inconvenience people with the change. So I'm hoping that something changes earlier in, but the bottom line is I want to come back to the US. Now I've got it booked for the 29th of June, so that's a couple of weeks away here. And I wasn't able to repurpose the ticket. It was going to be a $150 change fee to move my Delta ticket. And so I ended up putting an American Airlines reward on hold about 23 days out. And so I should have, being a good travel hacker, I should have avoided that $75 close-in booking fee. However, I forgot about it, and on day 20, I realized that I really wanted to book that American award. And so I ended up having to eat that extra $75 fee from booking the AA fee in close. And I guess the key takeaway here is what I saw was that basically the downside is if Delta doesn't screw up, I still have to pay $150 to get my 30,000 miles back, and either refund those miles to my account or make a change to another flight that's going to be useful. If it does work out, the only real cash outlay is that I ate that $75 fee from American. But on the plus side, I got a direct flight from Salvador to Miami, and American Express just opened up the Amex Centurion Lounge in Miami, and I got to say that kind of influenced my decision. I really wanted to connect in Miami and check that out. Hopefully, get a report out to you guys. So right now, there's just I believe 3 of them in the U.S. I think there's one in Dallas, there's one in San Francisco, and there's one in Las Vegas. Obviously, they started with Las Vegas to try and go after that nice luxury travel crowd. And these I went to the one in Dallas, and it's amazing. It's like they've got their own private chef that cooks up all this crazy food. So definitely looking forward to that, and I think it's going to be worth the extra $75.
Yeah, well, at least you've got the lounge to look forward to, and you can almost write it off as a business expense for the community.
That's true. I'll make sure to get a nice report back to everybody, and you guys will just keep rooting for Delta to screw up. All right. So next thing I wanted to mention to you guys, I tested out the limits of American Airlines stopover limits. So as you guys know, if you've been listening to the show for a little while, right now American Airlines does not allow stopovers, even on round-trip itineraries. This was something that changed last year, and so they don't let you stop for more than 23 hours and 59 minutes. And I actually found out that that rule that's been posted on all these other blogs is not true. The real limit is actually 24 hours exactly. And I know it because I booked 2 business class tickets from Taipei to Hong Kong and onward to New York. And then after a 22-hour stopover from New York to Detroit. But my stop in Hong Kong is going to be exactly 24 hours. So that's something useful. That's just, you can't possibly max it out anymore. And what happens here, guys, is that if you book it as a 24-hour and 1-minute connection, they're going to charge you for a trip within Asia and then separately a trip from Asia to North America. So by keeping it at exactly 24 hours in Hong Kong, I was able to have that be on one ticket. And so I just paid the price from Asia to North America, and the Taipei to Hong Kong stop was free there. So it's a really good deal, and I actually, on one award ticket, did it twice. So we've got a 24-hour stop in Hong Kong and then a 22-hour stop in New York City. And both of those are going to be on Cathay Pacific. It's an incredible deal. American Miles are one of the best priced options to go from Asia all the way to North America because the business class flights are only 20,000 points more than it would cost to fly in economy. So it's really a no-brainer to be upsold to the Cathay Pacific lie flat business class. And so that's something to keep in mind if you're comparing. You're going to pay a lot more in miles with Delta and with United. So try and save those American miles and use Cathay Pacific through Hong Kong. Or we're going to get into it later on this show. There's another great option to use Japan Airlines from Tokyo.
Yeah, that's big time, man.
So we're going to follow up with some more details on a future episode. I want to make sure that we get into this detailed summary of how to book travel to Tokyo. But just to give you guys a little bit of context for that trip, it's going to be part of a round-the-world itinerary. So I'm going to be reporting on the strategy and the different booking processes that I use to get the rest of this nailed down. Right now, as I said, I've got Taipei to New York and back to Detroit, and I'm still working on getting from Detroit to Madrid, getting my girlfriend Gabriella from Salvador to Madrid, and then the two of us from Budapest to Bangkok. Probably going to be looking at using Qatar Airways to stop in Doha for 24 hours. So we're gonna jump into some of those details on a future show because there's definitely some really interesting arbitrage opportunities on this trip with different mileage accounts and prices that go from region to region. But for now, let's get into the rest of this with the trip planning from Tokyo to North America and vice versa. Show notes for this episode, again, are going to be at broaders.com/Tokyo.
Yeah, so the format of this episode, we're going to break it down by each program, go over the airlines, go over the routes, and ultimately how many points you need, and we'll also touch on how you can get those points. So the first one that we're going to start with is SkyTeam. So with SkyTeam, the first program we're talking about, the two airlines servicing this is Delta and Korean. As far as the routes go, take note of, you've got New York, obviously Seattle, Atlanta, Detroit, Minneapolis, and Portland.
Yeah, so a couple of interesting things with the routes. First of all, we picked Delta and Korean because those are the most direct options. And so for the most part, as we're going through these routes, these are going to be options that have a direct flight to Tokyo. So when we read off these New York, Seattle, Atlanta, those are flights that Delta operates a direct flight to Tokyo. So using those as sort of your point of reference hubs, that's going to minimize your stops. There's also a few of these that are Korean Airlines hubs that are connections from Korean, and those are going to stop in Seoul, Korea. But because that's so close to Tokyo, it's still a really direct routing. And so those are kind of your jump-off points for your planning. Even if you don't live in one of those major hubs, you want to try and think it out so that you're going to be able to get to that departure point in the US with one flight and then get to either Tokyo directly or stop in Seoul. That's going to minimize your stopovers. AJ, let's get into some points options. So we're starting with Delta and Korean Airlines. Those are going to be the airlines that are operating the routes. What are the programs that people can use? What type of points can actually get people on Delta and Korean flights?
Well, starting with Delta, you've obviously got your Delta Sky Miles, and you've also got Amex membership rewards, their transfer partner. The same thing with Korean, their own program, but Chase also transfers to Korean. And then finally, you have Alaska Mileage Plan, and you can book on Delta with Alaska points.
Yeah, and so the only real drawback here with Korean, I mean, Korea, we're going to talk about some of the benefits with Korean. They have access to first class itineraries, which Delta does not let you do. So there's a big upside there. But you'll notice that AJ gave you 3 ways that you can get Delta points, either Amex, Alaska, or rather 3 ways that you can get onto Delta flights. And there's really only one way to book through Korean, and that's by transferring Ultimate Rewards from Chase. So if you want to do this the Korean route, and especially if you're going for first class, you've got to have a lot of Chase Ultimate Rewards to be able to do that. So just keep that in mind as you're planning and as we kind of run through some of the prices that you're going to be facing here.
Yeah, speaking as far as the pricing goes, with Korean on Korean operated flights, economy is 70K, business is 125, first is 160, and then on Korean partners, it's 80, 140, and 180 respectively for first class.
And so to get into a little bit more detail with Korean, they have some kind of crazy rules. So number 1 is you can't book for random people with Korean miles. So if you transfer your Chase Ultimate Rewards over to Korean, you're limited to family members. And so you've got to prove that, and it's a little bit of a pain, the process of going through and verifying somebody as eligible to be booked with your miles. So keep that in mind if you're trying to plan this out with a friend that's not related. Korean's not going to be a good choice. The other thing to keep in mind is that, number 1, you just heard AJ run through those prices. Korean's chart favors when you use Korean flights only. So there are some situations here where you really do want to look at flights that route through Seoul and go from the US to Seoul to Tokyo and are operated on all Korean flights, because that's going to save you miles, and it also gives you the added flexibility of being able to book one ways. So if you use just Korean, you can do Ultimate Rewards to Korean and book a one-way ticket, let's say from Atlanta to Seoul to Tokyo. If those are both Korean operated flights, you're going to pay fewer points and you've got that flexibility. On the other side of things, if you do it with a partner, so if you're using Korean miles to fly on Delta, which I don't know why you'd want to do anyways, but if you decided to do that, you got to book a round trip. So keep that in mind. You got to have more points if you're going to use partners, because you got to get the whole round trip value in there.
And as far as Delta's pricing goes, they don't have an official chart, but historically, it would be 70,000 for a round trip in economy and 140,000 for a round trip in business. And like Eric mentioned earlier, it's a 2-class option here. There's no way to book in first class on Delta.
Yeah, they don't really operate first class flights. They brand their business and first as business first altogether. And even for their partner airlines like Korean that have phenomenal first class products, Delta just won't let you use your Sky Miles to book into that seat. So keep that in mind with the Delta Sky Miles. The one really nice thing with Delta, though, is that you are going to save for sure on fuel costs. They don't pass through fuel surcharges, and so you're going to see really low prices on those flights, whereas with Korean, you're going to see a little bit higher out of pocket, probably in the range of $300 or so. So it makes a lot more sense to use Korean miles and book through the Korean program, go through that extra hassle if you're looking for business or first class. That's really the best option there.
Okay, now moving into the Star Alliance. So the airlines we're going to talk about is ANA, All Nippon Airways, United, Singapore, and then we've got Air Canada Aeroplan. As far as the routes go, we've got a lot here. We've got New York, LA, DC, Honolulu, Vancouver, Seattle, Houston, Newark. And then these next 3 are ones to take note of, because only Star Alliance operates direct flights to Tokyo from them. So you've got Calgary, you've got San Jose, and you've got Toronto. So Calgary, San Jose, and Toronto are direct flights to Tokyo that only the Star Alliance offers.
Very cool. All right, so to get these points, first of all, Amex membership rewards is going to be your best friend if you're trying to use Star Alliance, because you've got a lot more options here. Amex points are going to transfer 1-to-1 to ANA, Singapore and Aeroplan. Singapore and Aeroplan are instant transfer partners, so you're going to see those points posted immediately. That's really helpful if you've found the availability and you know the seats that you want. ANA does take a few days, so you got to be careful with those. If there's only one seat left, it's possible that you go to transfer your points and somebody else gets that seat before you get to book it. But Amex is a really good tool to have at your disposal if you're looking at Star Alliance. The other transfer program that you want to be aware of is Citi Thank You does transfer to Singapore. It's really the only very valuable transfer partner that Citi has. So if you have Citi points, this could be a good opportunity to use them, move them over to Singapore. And then the big one is Chase Ultimate Rewards. Those transfer to United. And there's also a lot of other cards issued by Chase that just convert to United Miles. So rather than the Ultimate Rewards that are transferable to a couple, if you already have United Miles either from flying or from one of your co-branded United cards, there's just a pretty big offer for the Chase 50,000 points for United. Those points are also going to be really helpful for Star Alliance.
All right, as far as the pricing goes, we'll start with ANA. So you've got 50,000 points for an economy round trip, 85 for business, and 150 for first. They've got a pretty complicated, nuanced scenario where there might be an extra $5,000 imposed on the way that you route.
5,000 miles, not dollars.
Excuse me, yes, they will charge you an extra $5,000 for taking the wrong route. So they might impose an extra 5,000 points if you route in a weird way. It was really complicated. So that is ANA. As far as United goes, we've got 70K for a round trip, 130 in business class, 160 in first class. Now, United does have some things. If you're on a flight that is not operated by United, it is going to be more miles, because actually the first class is showing at 220K in first class and 150K in business class.
Yep. So, I mean, really the big plus with United there is if you can find that direct flight. And as AJ said, a lot of those airports that we listed at the beginning do offer direct flights. In particular, Houston and Newark are multiple daily flights to Tokyo. So that's where you want to look if you want to save those miles. But bottom line is, there's a big cost savings that we're going to talk about as we wrap up this section with the out-of-pocket costs. What are the Singapore prices like? That's the only distance-based one left on the Star Alliance section. ANA went to zone.
All right, so Singapore, they've got kind of a funky one that we just need to point out the big difference. So they have West Coast pricing to Japan, and then they've got East Coast pricing to Japan, but it's not literally East Coast because Houston is considered East Coast. So as far as the West Coast prices go, you've got 65K, 155, and 175 for economy through first class. Pretty big jump once you get to the East Coast. You've got 110,000 points in economy, 210 in business, and 275 in first class.
Right on. Okay, so one thing that you guys want to keep in mind as sort of the big takeaway with the Star Alliance partners here is that United is going to be ideal if you want to minimize your out-of-pocket costs. So you're going to see very low out-of-pocket because they just charge those taxes and fees, and you're not going to see any fuel surcharges get added on to tickets booked through United. So that's a really big benefit. You've also got your stopover with United and an open jaw. Aeroplan also offers a stopover, but United's kind of your easiest routing rule and easiest miles to acquire. So if you're looking at economy, I would definitely recommend starting there. One other thing to know about United is that maybe you want to visit someplace besides just Japan. And there's actually a most powerful zone rule hack that applies to Japan. So the way United works is their zone-based chart gives priority to different regions. And it just so happens that the Middle East and Southeast Asia and North Asia and Africa are all more expensive than Japan. But if you touch Japan on the way to any of those four regions, you pay the Japan price because Japan is more powerful. Don't ask me why, but that's how it works. And so it's actually possible to save as many as 10,000 points by stopping in Japan for 24 hours, for 10 days, for a half a year on your way to Southeast Asia or Africa or the Middle East. So keep that in mind with United. We're going to link to a post by Drew from Travel is Free that explains all the lunacy that is the United routing rules, so you guys can really go on a deep dive there. But just keep that in mind. You can actually save by stopping in Japan on the way to other places. The next key takeaway here, guys, is if you want to use your miles for business and first class, if you really value that experience, Singapore is going to be tough to beat because it's really hard to get premium cabin seats on Singapore with other miles. So in other words, if you use United Miles, Air Canada, or ANA to book on Singapore, you're going to get a tiny fraction of the seats that Singapore is offering up to their own KrisFlyer members. The best strategy there is to move your Amex, your Citi Thank You Rewards, or your Chase Ultimate Rewards to KrisFlyer, the Singapore program, and book from there. You are going to pay higher out-of-pocket costs, so you're going to be looking at probably at least $300, maybe as much as $500 round trip in taxes and fuel surcharges, but for a business or first class ticket, that's going to be great, and you want to be on a Singapore operated flight for those because Singapore is just going to be incredible, and they've actually got a really interesting Fifth Freedom route. This is one of my favorite things about air travel is sometimes an airline from one country will operate a route between two totally unrelated countries, and it just so happens that LAX and Tokyo fall into this category for Singapore. So if you happen to be based in California, look at this route. Singapore flies from LA to Tokyo on the way to Singapore. So you can fly on Singapore. I think they operate that with their A380, which means you've got an opportunity to jump into suites class, which is basically like a tiny hotel room on a plane. And so that's a really good option. They just all around have way better in-flight experience for business and first class than you're going to find on United, Air Canada, or even ANA, which is a little bit above the other two. Last but not least, ANA points do offer the best all-around pricing with miles. So in other words, in real numbers, you're probably going to save from most parts of the US if you book with ANA, but you're going to have to do it as a round trip. So they don't let you do the one way like United, Air Canada, and Singapore, and you are going to pay some out-of-pocket fuel surcharges. So if you're poor on miles, ANA could be a good place to look, but otherwise I would focus on United for economy and Singapore for premium class. All right, guys, so the last category that we're going to talk about is One World Alliance. There are phenomenal routes on both American and Japan Airlines. Both of those are One World partners. And the main direct flights that you're going to see, you want to be looking at New York JFK, Honolulu, Los Angeles, Vancouver, Washington, Dallas, Chicago, San Francisco, and then also kind of the more obscure ones that you're not going to find with the other alliances. There's Boston, Miami, Orlando, and San Diego. So those are your main hubs from the US if you're going to be using One World points, and those are places that you're going to find direct flights from either American, Japan Airlines, or both.
And speaking of One World points, American Airlines is really the play here. It's just much easier to acquire American AA Advantage miles than it is the JAL to get points into JAL. However, JAL is a transfer partner of SPG, as is American Airlines. As far as the pricing goes for flying from the US to Tokyo round trip or one way, with American, it's $65,000 in economy, $100 in business, and $130 in first class. And JAL's got a little bit more nuanced pricing.
Yeah, I mean, like AJ said, the American is just the go-to option, and the main reason here is that JAL, you're going to pay as much as $500 or $600 out of pocket for fuel surcharges. So there's really not a good reason to use JAL. There's some possible savings. The best you're going to do is maybe saving 15,000 points in either economy, business, or first over the pricing for American that AJ just mentioned. So there's some possible minor savings in points. And honestly, the only reason that you would want to do this, guys, is if you just have enough points in Starwood to make it happen with JAL and you don't have those extra 15,000 points to make it happen with American. Because otherwise, transfer your Starwood points to American. It's just going to be a better deal. You're going to pay way less and you're still going to be able to fly on a Japan Airlines flight. So if you're going for business or first class, you're going to pay a lot less out of pocket in that cash payment by booking through American Airlines. And if you guys have been paying attention, we are going to post these prices that we've been running off on the Abroaders show notes page at abroaders.com/Tokyo. So you're going to have a reference point, but American blows everybody out of the water. It is by far the lowest price in all three categories. So that's where you want to be if you've got plans to go to Tokyo. That's just going to be your best all-around option.
All right, and one thing Eric forgot to mention, for anyone that is inspired about the land of the rising sun, not the house of the rising sun, because that would be New Orleans, you can check out abroaders.com/cheapo. Eric interviews, man, I forgot his name, of tokyocheapo.com.
That is going to be Chris Kirkland. and he runs a phenomenal blog on Tokyo, all the stuff that you need to know once you get there on this super cheap flight that we helped you get organized for today. You're going to save even more money when you get there by sleeping in internet cafes, and there's all kinds of funny trips. I mean, honestly, it's a great site. It's a phenomenal resource. There's a lot of like really, clean and safe, great ways to have fun that they feature in there, but there's also some incredibly creative posts that talk about some of the truly absolutely dead broke traveler strategies to save that extra $5 if you really need to. So definitely worth a read for the entertainment, and I hope you guys check out the interview.
Cool. And before we get into the iJow, do not forget about that amazing new free service that we have for you, abroaders.com/alerts. Tell us where you're going to be flying from. Tell us where in the world you would want to go, and you will get only emails pertaining to the places you want to go from where you want to fly. So that is abroaders.com/alerts. It is completely free, and it is pretty awesome, so I urge you to go there and sign up.
Yeah, tell your friends, because the more people we get on there, the more we can put into doing this research and finding even more flights. So the more people we get, the better the service will become.
And as far as this week's International Jam of the Week goes, it's not international for Americans, but for everybody else. And we do have, I believe, like 85 countries represented in the Abroaders community. So for people living in those 84 other countries, this is international for you. The artist is Phanogram. The song is Don't Move. It's not exactly new, but it's a song I really love, hadn't heard in a while, kind of got it back today. And another thing I love about it is, for it being pop electronic, these people actually sound good live. It's not a bunch of post-produced bullshit that's, I don't know, just typical pop these days. So check it out, Phanogram, and the song is Don't Move.
Hey Broaders, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show feedback to Eric or AJ at abroaders.com. We will see you next week.